Welcome everybody to College Algebra. This is section 1.1, Linear Equations, part 3. Today we will be working on applied problems or linear models, or what is commonly referred to as, everybody's favorite, the word problem. We're going to be reading word problems and how to come up with linear equations and solve those linear equations from the actual word problems. And you can't exactly use the same exact steps that I mentioned in the very first video in part 1. You're gonna use parts, or you're gonna use those steps, but you got to do a couple more things first. So I'm just gonna list the other stuff. List some new steps for applied problems. Step 1, read carefully. And I want to emphasize carefully. If that requires you to read 2 to 3 times or even more, you must do that. I mean, you can't get anywhere if you don't understand what the problem is saying and what it's asking. So be sure that you read the problem very carefully. Step 2, assign a letter to what you're looking for. Now this could be X, this could be A, this could be B, this could be any letter that you want. It doesn't really matter as long as you assign some variable to what you're looking for. Step 3, we're going to list the facts and make expressions. We want to make these expressions to represent a linear equation. And now step 4, we're going to solve this linear equation. And this is where we're going to use those 6 steps from the part 1 video. And then step 5, does it make sense? Now, I don't want to say check your answer, because whatever answer you get, if you plug it back into your original equation, what if your original equation is wrong? That's why I say, does it make sense? Does your answer, what you got, make sense? Is it reasonable? And if it's not reasonable, and if it doesn't make sense, then you know that somewhere along the line you did something wrong. Okay, so jumping right into it. Let's get to our first problem. K is paid time and a half for hours worked in excess of 40 hours and double time for hours worked on Sunday. If K had gross weekly wages of $806 for working 53 hours, 5 of which were on Sunday, what is his regularly hourly rate? So step 1, read the problem. We read the problem, but we want to make sure that we understand what the problem is. So, recommend maybe highlighting things that are important, finding the valuable pieces of information. So K is paid time and a half. Now, what does time and a half mean? Well, time and a half represents 1.5 times whatever the hourly rate is, in excess of 40 hours. So that can be considered what you would think of as overtime. Double time, and what does double time mean? Well, double time just means 2 times the amount for hours worked on Sunday. Okay, so not overtime. I mean, it could be overtime, but no matter when it is, if it's worked on Sunday, you're getting paid 2 times your hourly rate. if K grosses weekly wages of $806 for working 53 total hours, 5 of which were on Sunday. I'm going to go back to orange because we did Sunday in orange, 5 of which were on Sunday. What is the hourly rate? What is his regular hourly rate? Okay, so we have a bunch of pieces of information. Step 2, we want to assign a variable to what we're looking for. So what we are looking for is the regular hourly rate. So we'll just assign that as X. X is going to equal the hourly rate. Step 3, we want to list all of the facts in terms of actual expressions. Okay, so for this, it might help to make a table. You don't necessarily have to make a table, but just to give you an idea of, kind of give you a better picture of what we're looking at. We have hours worked. We have how much we get paid. And we have this could be hourly wages and then total wages. So just like a regular job, you take the amount of hours you work times how much you make. That's going to give you your total money. Okay, so we have our variable time. Let's do our regular hours. Well, how many regular hours did they make? Well, she worked 40 total hours. Hourly wage for those first total hours, which is X. So our total wages is going to be 40X. Our overtime hours, which is our time and a half hours, how many hours of those did they work? Well, 5 hours were on Sunday. 53 hours were more than 40. So how many hours is left over? We're going to have 8 regular hours. So our hourly wage is 1.5x. Well, what is 8 times 1.5x? It's going to give us 12x. And then our last one, which is on Sunday. How many hours did they work on Sunday? Well, 5 total hours. What's the wage? 2x. And our total wages is going to be 10x. And this should add up to 40 hours, 8 hours, 53 hours. That should add up to our total of 53 hours, and it does. So that's how many hours we worked. We make sure that we do that. Now we have to set up some type of equation. Well, our total wages is going to be $806. So we'll have our regular hours. This is regular hours. Plus our overtime hours, which is 12x. And then our Sunday hours, which is 10x. And that's going to equal $806. Going to solving the equation now. Our next step, well, all we have are common terms on the left side here. 40x plus 12x plus 10x. That is going to give us 62x equals 806. And our last step, divide by 62. And typing that into the calculator, we're going to get 13. So K makes $13 an hour. Now the very last step, does this make sense? Well, $13 an hour seems like a reasonable amount for working 53 hours, making $806. If this was some number like 104 or something, you would know that there's no way that if he made $104 an hour that he could work 53 hours and only make $806. So $13 an hour. Second question. Going into the final exam, which will count as 2/3 of the final grade, Lacey has test scores of 86, 80, 84, and 94. What minimum score does Lacey need on the final exam in order to earn a B? What does she need to earn an A? So first step, we want to find or read the question. Read the question carefully, underlining all important information. Going into the final exam, which will count as 2/3 of the final grade. So we know that this one single test, the final exam, is going to count as 2/3 of your total grade. Lacey has test scores of 86, 80, 84, and 94. It doesn't specifically say that the rest of the grade is 1/3, but since it only lists these other test scores as the only other input for your actual grades, you can assume that these test scores are going to count for the other part of the grade, which is 1/3. So 1/3 of the grade is going to be these 4 test scores, and 2/3 of the grade is going to be just the final exam. What is the minimum score? We want the minimum score in order to earn a B. And what does she need to make an A? So we're just going to assume that a B is 80% and up, and an A is going to be 90% and up. So what does she need in order to get an 80 or above? What does she need in order to get a 90 and above? So now we read the problem, we have all of the information. Now we're going to make a list of expressions that we need in order to solve the problem. So here we have 2/3 of the final grade. So we'll just solve. We have 2 parts that we want to solve. We want to find out the grade to make a B, find out the grade to make an A. So the first one, what is the variable? Well, we'll just call it X, and we'll call that the final exam score. So we're going to have 2 separate final exam scores. The first final exam to make a B, second final exam to make an A. 2/3 of that. So we have 2/3 times the final exam plus 1/3 of the test scores is going to equal the final grade. Do we know our final exam score? No, we do not, because that is what we're looking for. So we're going to have 2/3 of the final exam score, which we consider as an X, 1/3 of all the test scores. Well, how do we find out what the test scores are? Well, they're listed here. 86, 80, 84, and 94, but we want the average of all of those test scores, since all of those test scores count for 1/3 of the grade. So how do we find average? We just take the total and divide by the number that we have. So all of the test scores, we have 4 test scores, divide by 4 equals, and the final grade, well, we want it to be a B, 80%. So now it's just simplify. 2/3 x, can't simplify that. 1/3 times this middle here. Everything in these brackets are parentheses. 1/3. So we'll have 86 plus 80 plus 84 plus 94 divided by 4. And that's going to give us a score of 86. So we have our equation here, and again we want to find the same thing here, so we want an A as well. So when we do the second equation, we're just going to replace this 80 with the 90. But solving this equation first, now we move to the steps that we covered in the very first, or in part 1. We have a fraction here. Eliminate the fraction by using least common multiple. Well, there's only one number in the denominator, which is 3. So we're going to multiply everything by 3. Two-thirds x plus 1/3 times 86 equals 80, and we have to multiply both sides by 3. So the 3's are going to cancel for the first one. 2x, the 3's are going to cancel on the second term, equals 80 times 3, which is 240. We want the variables on one side, all of the numbers on the other side, so we're going to subtract our 86 from both sides. 2x equal to 240 minus 86 is going to give us 154. Last step, divide both sides by 2. X equal 77%. Now, does this value make sense? Well, looking at our test scores, you'll see that all of the test scores are above an 80. So since all of these are above an 80, you know that she can go a little below an 80 and still have that average. So 77 is close to an 80, so that makes sense. Second equation, we want to get an A. And again, we're going to use the same exact equation that we had here, except instead of having an 80, we're just going to replace that with a 90. So 2/3 x plus 1/3 times 86 equals 90. Doing the same exact thing that we did before, multiplying by the least common multiple. Multiply the whole equation or both sides. So the 3's are going to cancel for the first fraction. We're left with 2x plus 86 equals 270. Subtract 86 from both sides. So 270 minus 86, that's going to give us 184. Divide by 2. X is going to be 92%. Now, does that answer seem reasonable? Well, looking back at our test scores, you see that 86, 80, 84, 94. So you know that the majority of the tests, 3 out of the 4 tests were below a 90. One of them was above a 90. So you would think that for the final exam, she probably needs above a 90, a little bit above a 90 to reach that 90 for your grade. X is 92%, so that looks good. Well, that's going to do it for today. If this helped you, be sure you drop a like, subscribe if you're not subscribed, and I'll see you all later. Bye.